welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello, happy Wednesday, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited about today's episode because it is with one of my favorite astrologers, Ali Ofstedal. I have been following her for a while and her energy is just so kind and compassionate. I relate to her a lot. We're both manifesting generators, Scorpio risings. I just feel really connected to her in a lot of ways. And she just has such a special presence. She's an intuitive and quantum healer, evolutionary astrologer, and a mentor, and her passion lies in guiding women back into alignment. Through an inward journey of self-discovery utilizing astrology, quantum, and intuitive healing practices, she works closely with her clients to shed conditioning and integrate any fragmentation, keeping them detached from their sovereignty and power. The core of her work with clients is rooted in compassion for self, where we meet and integrate all of our parts with love and anchor into the center of our being. Her goal is to bring deep cellular level healing and guide each person back into alignment and back into their innate feminine power. Ali is trained in Shamanic Energy Medicine, intuitive and quantum healing, integrative somatic parts work, and somatic attachment therapy. She offers tailored one-on-one sessions based upon the needs of her clients and the current energy climate. As you can probably hear, there's a lot of overlap in the work we do and just our passion for living connected to our true self, really coming back home to who we truly are and living confidently and authentically. In this episode, we talk about Ali's background, how she came to do the work she does, and that deep healing, transformative journey that she embarked on. We talk about Pluto shifting into Aquarius and the big astrological transformations we are undergoing as a collective, and how astrology is a practical, applicable tool that we can use to ground us in our everyday lives. We talk about evolutionary astrology and what that is. We talk about the importance of regulating our nervous system and living in the present moment. Ali shares some energy predictions for 2024 and so much more. This is one of my favorite episodes I have recorded so far, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to it. Let me know what you think, and as always, please reach out, leave a rating and review. It means so much to me and really helps the podcast, and I will see you guys next week. Okay, Ali, welcome to the podcast. I'm so grateful to have you on.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's such an honor. And I really wanted to begin by having you talk a little bit about what got you started on your spiritual journey, what felt like the biggest turning point in your life, how you found astrology and how you shifted that into your career.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think like many people, what got me into this work was my own work. I think that's sort of the idea of even like the wounded healer is sort of, although I don't totally identify with that archetype because it feels a little, I don't know, just stale, outdated. But I think the highest aspect of that is that we harvest our medicine from our own experiences, and our own challenges and traumas. And that was certainly the case for me. I had a lot of anxiety as a child. I experienced a lot of different sort of physical traumas as a child. I had really big back surgeries and surgeries on my neck at 7 and 8, and they were pretty far up. They were basically on my brain stem. So there was a lot of disruption within my field very early on. And of course, 7 and 8, those are such impactful years to, with subconscious developing and just different developmental thresholds that we navigate. So having those different developmental thresholds at 7 and 8, it was just for me, I think it was really disruptive in my development, and it created a lot of attachment trauma and just nervous system dysregulation, anxiety. And from there, it just kind of continued to compound as I moved through life, navigating different familial challenges. At 21, I started getting really intense panic attacks. So it forced me to really look at how I was living my life, and that initiated the journey for me. It was really at 21 when I started looking at how I was taking care of myself, how I was operating, where I was operating from. I lived way outside of myself, so I was just people pleasing and sort of living living outside of myself and just living someone else's life, essentially. I wasn't really listening to what I truly desired. There was a lot of codependency in my relationships, and that led me to the path that I'm on now. And I went through different things in my 20s that kind of continued to activate my own healing. I got my dog at 21, and he started teaching me how to not only mother him, but mother myself. And it was really at 26, 27 that I got initiated into this work. And I started really experiencing my own, like the first channeling experiences that I'd ever had. I realized that I needed to return back to myself. So I started getting really quiet. I had gotten married that year, and I kind of started realizing slowly that I had been making all of these decisions and living a life that was not authentic to me. And so my journey back to myself was through astrology at first, because I had been a recruiter. I was doing all these personality tests. I loved learning about how people are wired, what makes them tick, why they do what they do, how our experiences in this life affect or impact our decisions and how we structure our lives. And then, of course, I was blasted open in my 20s to this belief and knowing within my bones that it's not only just this experience that we have, but there's a lot else, a lot of other things that affect it, past lives, ancestral. It was this awakening and this expansion of my consciousness that really helped me sort of like reckon with and understand my own lived experience. So I got into astrology around that time, started learning. I had a reading with an astrologer who said, if you don't, I think it was going through the sun's, Pluto squaring my sun. And that was like really what initiated me into this chapter. I started dissolving things that weren't working. I started spending a lot of time alone, and I started just learning about myself, going into my wiring, understanding why I was who I was and what I was doing. And this astrologer said, if you don't start doing this work, like for others, if you don't step into your gifts, it will consume you, like you'll just continue getting sicker. You'll continue to have the universe will get your attention in whatever way it needs to. So I started studying astrology, doing readings for loved ones, and that kind of led me down this path. But it's certainly been an interesting journey. I went through a divorce around that time. It was a real tower moment where I was like, all right, well, I guess I have to burn everything down that isn't authentic to me in order to like find what that looks like. So it was quite intense, but
Honestly, I relate to many different pieces of that, particularly the needing to take a step back and really learn who we are and understand ourselves on a deeper level, separate from what everyone else has been telling us to do and what we've been conditioned to believe we need to do, and rewrite the script for ourselves. I think that so few people take the time and effort to really do that. And without that, like you were saying, we live a life outside of ourselves. We live someone else's life. And I think the ability to burn it all to the ground and start over is so powerful. I think we both are Scorpio risings.
amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like maybe there's some commonality in that, but it's really hard and it's really scary to do that.
Yeah. it challenges all of our sort of it changes or it challenges our human nature, to stick with what's familiar, to sort of seek safety, in the familiar and our ego and all the things that are it's literally like there to keep us safe, so much of our growth is found in the uncertainty and in the unknown. And that's been one of my biggest lessons that I've had to reckon with. For me, my Pluto's in the first house, so I had to reckon with my fear of change, my fear of loss. And that's my Sun and my Mercury are in the 12th house too, which is the house of loss. And so that's been one of my greatest challenges in this life, and like leaning into the discomfort, leaning into the fear. Yeah, it's a big one. But Scorpio rising is no joke. It is an interesting placement, and it's so fun to work with when you can finally accept it and sort of like see the beauty and the power in it.
Yeah, I love having a Scorpio rising because I and my sun and moon are both in Virgo, and that's always been very clear to me. I'm very Virgo, but learning that I had this Scorpio rising made it all make more sense. It was like a part of me that I felt was missing that I couldn't understand, and it kind of put a puzzle piece in place. And I was like, oh, okay, that
There you go.
makes sense. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I love that combination, Virgo and Scorpio rising. They probably challenge each other in a lot of ways, but it's so cool.
yeah, they do. But so when that astrologer said that to you, did you accept it right away? Was that something you immediately were like, okay, yes, I see, I agree with you, or was there any resistance? What did that path look like for you?
Yeah. For me, it's something I'd known. I'd had a lot of other different types of practitioners or mentors tell me the same thing. So it was like, for me, the challenge was understanding what that looked like, because I knew I loved astrology. I loved studying people, and studying their habits and their patterns and sort of like helping them shift things in order to find themselves again, or to find more flow, ease, alignment within their lives. It wasn't until I really started studying astrology, and I worked with one person in particular, and um, he was such a character, but he was so well versed in it. And he and I went through this process together where he activated within me all the codes that had been dormant. So it was almost overnight that I downloaded the whole system of astrology, because it had been there and it just needed to be activated. So I realized through like a lot of different journeys and working with different people that I had been an astrologer so many different times and so many different lifetimes. So it was sort of just needed to be awakened within me. And then when I started doing that, I realized that um, there's so much healing and understanding oneself better and returning back to, having it sort of um, not verified, but confirmed that the way you are is how, is good and is okay and is actually where you want to be, where you want to exist. But when I really got into the shamanic, quantum, intuitive healing, it's where I was able to find this process of working with people, working with myself, then also working with people that just felt so natural. And it's what I do now. And I love it so much. It's just, yeah, but it's been, it was a journey. And I think when he said that to me, I was like, okay, I know, but like, can you just tell me how, And that's, of course, as anyone on this journey knows, like, it's never just handed to you in that way, by someone else. So you have to find it.
Yeah, and I think finding it is what makes it your own. Like if it's a path that's just handed to you, then it's not usually your path. But when you kind of uncover it for yourself, it you really own it and own who you are and understand who you are, like we were saying before.
Yeah. And I do think that learning is so important. I believe that we're, lifelong students, and that's important because even like the marketing, like if you're doing this work, if you're a practitioner or a space holder, a marketing professional will come in and say, you need to be a master, or like, a master in something. And I'm like, how am I a master of anything at 35? You know what I mean? Like I'm a student and I'm a space holder, but I'm learning and healing alongside my clients. So um I think it's really important to like respect the different modalities and learnings and like trainings even, but there's also an innate toolbox that we each contain and each have within us. And when I work with people within my mentorship, I'm always working to help them activate that so that they can find their own way of healing and learning. And I work with a lot of people who are space holders who are wanting to step into that more, you know? And when I work with them, I think they so often come to this and they want me to teach them something. And I was like, it's so much less about that. And it's so much more about stripping away all the things you've been taught that aren't that authentic to you. And then activating the deep ancient wisdom you have. And then from there, if you're in that flow and you're working with that energy and you decide you want to do a somatic experiencing training or learn more about the nervous system or learn about astrology, that's beautiful. But like really honoring what we have already innately within us is one of the most, I think, empowering things we can do, you know?
I agree. And that's been a huge part of my experience because I am also someone who loves learning and who has delved into a lot of different trainings and gone really deep. And that's been really important to me. And also I love it. And at the same time, there's so many times I'm like, I already know this. Like
Yeah.
I don't need someone else. I don't need another training. I don't need another person to tell me their way. And I had to make the decision to trust I was ready to share and to trust my own inner knowing and to trust my own path and that I would be able to figure out my own path and to find that balance. And it can be really challenging to do that, especially when feeling like I'm such a beginner in so many ways and to know like to trust that we all have that inner knowing within us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's part of the process and part of the journey. It's awakening to that and to strip away the fears of being within that framework. Because I will say, like, a lot of the women I work with who have, or who have a desire to step into their natural gifts, which almost all of them do, it's, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of past life trauma around it. Typically, there's things that we need to sort of like integrate and work through in order to be 100% comfortable in stepping into it fully and embodying it. And that's part of the important journey because it's typically what we, are able to provide for clients too, and people we work with. So yeah, I love that. I think you're right. Like I'm a manifesting generator as well, as you know. So I am interested in a million things and I want to do a million trainings. And then I'm just like, wait a second, what I'm doing is so fulfilling and it works really well with people and I have wonderful feedback. And how can I become a sort of a quote unquote master? I'm using that word again, but like, how can I become a master of my own gifts first and then add in the trainings, And not to say that trainings aren't incredible because I think they are, but it's important to, I think, know when we're falling into the trap of feeling unworthy or incapable. And so we lean into being in a training forever, different types of trainings, or if we're just doing that because we feel like we're ready to integrate a new learning modality.
Yeah, that I had to put my foot down with myself and say, there's no more trainings. Like it's time to just put it out there. And I'm also a manifesting generator, and we both also have that one in our profile. I don't know how much you know about human design, but that one is the researcher, like wanting to go deep and wanting to learn all the things. And I love that about myself. And I think it's really important, but we can go deep within ourselves and learn our own gifts. We don't need to always turn to other people to tell us how to do it. What you do specifically is evolutionary astrology. So I'd love to know a little bit more about how you define that.
I love that question because I feel like there's so many different types of astrology and also astrologers. And because we're human and we have our own unique channel, we're bringing this information through our channel, right? That has like knowledge and information and conditioning and all the things and our own lived experience. So evolutionary astrology for me is the study of our soul's evolution, not only through this life, but other lifetimes. And what I'm really working on is understanding why you're here, what you're here to learn, what you're here to heal, what you're here to integrate, how you can return back to that blueprint and that framework to sort of like reap the most medicine from it, because I think so often we sort of fight our wiring, and for many different reasons, conditioning, societal expectations, wounding, but evolutionary astrology is really the study of our soul's evolution. So we're looking at everything through the lens of evolution. So I'm looking at every single planetary placement through that lens. So I know every placement is there for a very specific purpose to lead you along this evolutionary path. So to give you the experiences you're meant to have, to heal certain things, to meet who you're meant to meet. And so I like that type of astrology because number one, it's just how I see the world and how I experience the world, but also because it gives people, I feel like it's empowering. And I've worked with astrologers and I've had clients come to me who have worked with other astrologers who are, see things as more of a, with more rigidity, sort of like, this is just how it is. And you can't, there's nothing you can really do to fix it or change it. And I don't believe that. I believe that we're here to evolve. And so we can live in the lower expression of a placement or the highest expression of it. And our job really, I believe, is to evolve from the lower expression to the higher expression of that placement, like a Venus and Virgo, for example. If you're living in the shadow of it, you're going to suffer through relationships in a lot of ways. But if you're living in the highest expression of that, you're an extremely devoted, caring, and a partner that's so devoted to growth and evolution that you're a wonderful partner, so I just believe that there's opportunity in each and every placement, and every person's chart has so much opportunity for growth. And that's really what we focus on in that work. So yeah, it's fun. I love evolutionary astrology, and I love astrology in general, and I love learning different types of astrology, but I always return back to this type, and it's kind of less about the type itself, and it's more about just my own natural flavor that I give it, I guess,
Yeah, coming back to incorporating our own gifts and trusting our own gifts. And I love that because this is one reason that I love human design. I love astrology, is that they're meant to be affirming of who we are and who we came here to be. And they're meant to be empowering and to show us how we can be the best versions of ourselves while we're growing and evolving, and to not get caught up in the rigidity and the dogma of and the rules of how these systems can be presented.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so I've had so many people come to me and say, I met with an astrologer 10 years ago and she told me this placement means I'll never find a partner that won't cheat on me. And I'm just like, whoa, we need to take a step back. That's just a program that was installed. Like let's look at this through the lens of opportunity, and why is that placement there? It's not, you're not fated to anything, and that's important. And I think that's probably the case within all different types of modalities. It's like there can be programming that's just a projection of that person and their beliefs, or there's like, the way to like really embrace the opportunity and like you said, the affirmation that can come from empowering yourself to learn about who you are and how you can work with that in the most empowered way.
I really use human design to kind of guide my life in a lot of ways, but I lean on astrology more to explain energy, especially in the collective, what's happening in the world and the themes that we're moving through. And plus, astrology is one of the modalities that makes up human design. But I know Pluto is shifting into Aquarius, I think this weekend.
Yeah, this weekend. Yep.
And I know that's a big shift. And I'm really excited to talk about this for so many reasons. But one reason is that I have a lot of people in my life who are skeptics around these kinds of modalities. And it shows up so concretely in our world and gives them this real evidence. Like, if astrology isn't real, then how can you explain this? It's even when people talk about how we're going through, and I'm not an expert in astrology at all, but we're going through some return that is the same as what was happening in World War II, and certain things around the world. Like, I just love talking about these things because I think it helps bring it into the world, like in a tangible way.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm so happy for astrologers because it's we over the last few years, I think that people have started realizing that it's actually tangible, and it's sort of like a weather forecast,
Mm.
and it is. I mean, it's the energetic weather forecast, and it just shows us what energy is present, specifically when we look at the transits, right? So, it's so fun to look at that because I do feel like a weatherman sometimes, and I typically experience things, not always, but like 2 weeks before it occurs, because I'm meant to hold space for people navigating it. And oftentimes I'm like in it as well at the same time. But it's fun to be able to see these transits coming forward and like knowing they're coming and learning how we can work with them. And I think that's the power of it, right? It's like if we know a snow or ice storm is coming, we can prepare, we can get extra water if we need to, we can cancel things, whatever we need to do. And it's the same thing with astrology. It's like knowing that there's a big transit approaching or a big full moon or an eclipse. We can prepare. We can do as much as we can up front to start to process and integrate what we need to in order for it to feel more easeful, more in flow. Um, and we can just bring some sense of orientation, into our lives when we understand why something's happening, you know? And I mean, I have seen it go the opposite way where people are like blaming, what they're navigating on the planets all the time. And that's just that like sort of victim mindset, or that like disempowerment will be there regardless if it's astrology or, you know, the weather, like the rain is happening to them, whatever it is, but I love to work with people and teach people and work with myself to see everything as an opportunity, you know. And yeah, the transits are so fascinating and fun because like I said, it is like sort of a weather report. And I notice people in my life as well who are not into astrology at all. And they message me after they see a post or something and they're like, okay, this is really weird. This happened. And like, I have a few friends who we don't even talk about astrology. They're like childhood friends. And I love talking to them because we're not talking about astrology, but they're telling me about what's occurring in their lives and what's coming up. And I'm like, in my brain, in my Scorpio rising brain, I'm like, oh, that's because of this and this and this and this. And I don't even say that to them, but it's just fun to see how it interacts with us, regardless if we have awareness of it or not. But I believe having the awareness gives us power. So yeah, this Pluto transit is a big one. We've been at the threshold of this for well over a year, close to like a year and a half probably. And like dancing at the last degrees of Capricorn, knowing that there's a lot that needs to be finished up and sort of loose ends that need to be tied before we enter into the Pluto and Aquarius shift that's officially in November. So this weekend we have Pluto, the planet of transformation, the underworld. It really forces us to look at where things need to dissolve and what needs to change, and it will reveal anything held within our subtle bodies, our subconscious that need healing. That planet, Pluto, is moving into Aquarius. It's been in Capricorn since 2008, doing a lot of work on our systems, money, power, authority, looking at the workings of our world and whether or not it actually is in service to the greater good or just a small population. And with it moving into Aquarius, it's on the 21st of January. It will be there from January 21st to September. While it's retrograding, it dips back into Capricorn. So we kind of have this push and pull. And then on November 19th, we have it stepping into Aquarius for 20 years. So Pluto moves pretty slowly and it kind of defines generations. So it's just fascinating to see these Pluto and Aquarius, like how that's really affecting our collective, but also us at an individual level, because it's always doing both, And I think that it's what will really catapult us into this new era. I think we all feel like so many things need to change within our world, and we're kind of in this collapse. We're in the tower, in the tower card in tarot, where so many things are being revealed that aren't working. There's a lot of collapsing of timelines, of systems, and it's an uncomfortable space to be in. And I think Pluto in Aquarius is it'll take a few years, but it's going to really push us into that new era. And we can start embodying that frequency anytime, and that's what it will continue to teach us, is how do we step outside of the pain, the suffering, the density, and into those higher frequencies. And that really is, the only way to do that is to embody them and to spend time with them and to be present with them to transmute the density. So anyway, that's a long answer, but it feels it's really going to change the world, honestly, this transit. It's a big one, a really big one. So I think we're all ready, but
I think we're all ready. I think we need it, honestly, even if we're not ready. But say this was a weather report, what would you tell people that they need, if it one or two things to prepare for what's coming or to embody as we make this shift? What would you recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. So Aquarius it focuses on the collective. That's sort of its like the way it moves through the world. It doesn't focus on the individual as much as the collective. And that's why a lot of people who have Saturn in Aquarius are philanthropists and they're doing work that's really changing the world. It's incredible. But one of its shadow aspects is that Aquarius can live in the mind and exist only in the mind. And it can detach from the physical to exist in that space. And that's, not how we want to move forward, of course. So there's a lot of shadow with this transit. I think it's important for people to focus on embodiment as much as possible, because I see, our evolution is not through the mind. Our evolution is through the body. And I believe we're here now in this incarnation to help the physical shift frequency, which requires a lot of trauma work, somatic work, work with the nervous system to feel safe and anchored. And with the amount of change that's going to occur, I mean, if you study human design, so 2027 is a big year. And I think that 2024 is in many ways sort of the gateway for that year in an interesting way. I mean, we've been opening those doors for 5 years probably, but it's important for people to really work with their sense of safety and security within their bodies in order to feel safe through all the changes that are going to come over the next 20 years. To work with the energy is to release our grip on what feels safe and comfortable because it's familiar, because Aquarius is going to come in and force us to quantum leap. Like it's very fast electric energy. So once it starts picking up over the next few years, we are going to face radical change within our daily lives. And the important thing is that you work with your own system to find safety amidst the change and the chaos. And so I would encourage anyone listening to this who hasn't done so already, like really focusing on the body, finding safety within the body, creating practices and rituals that are anchoring and that help you orient a little bit in where you are, and to release your grip a little bit on what we thought things would look like, because we've reached a point in our human evolution where things might be completely different than what we thought they would be in 10 years. So this is not to scare anyone. Like this is all, I think, happening in the way it's meant to, but it's important to work with our own fears around change, before we get catapulted into it. So
Yeah, I think so many people are terrified of change and they will do anything to avoid it or pretend it's not happening, whether that's numbing or any coping mechanism that they can turn to. And I just don't think that is an option anymore. I think we have to face it. We have to be willing to embrace the change. I think that's one gift that embracing being a manifesting generator gives us, is always changing. Maybe that's Scorpio rising too. But a lot of people that I work with, I help them find their own sacred ritual that grounds them, and that they can turn to when things feel really unsteady and ungrounded. I have found it common in spiritual spaces for people to disappear into their minds and to live in that very airy space. And I think the most spiritual thing we can do is to be in our bodies and to be on this planet, because that's where we are, and we're here for that. So I think that everything you're saying is so powerful and so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I truly believe that we will evolve and reach our highest expression when we start honoring the nervous system, and like when every human on the planet is a master of their own nervous system, is so radically comfortable being 100% present and embodied, that's when we reach that space of like sort of ascension in a way. You know what I mean? It's not out of the body, it's through the body. So I completely agree. I think that spiritual bypassing is a real issue. I also think that it's not even necessarily spiritual bypassing, but, bypassing in general, coping, escaping, dissociation, all of those are threats to our evolution, and we're evolving through our bodies and with our bodies and bring more safety and security through those spaces so that we can live in our highest expression. Because I've met a lot of people who are deeply spiritual and completely dissociated. They run on anxiety all the time, and it's their frequency is just, omitting that really fear. So yeah, it's very, very interesting to see how we all have our different approaches and how the ego can sort of convince us we're doing what we need to do instead of what's actually right for us. So,
and that's why the simplicity of just coming back to the present moment is the most important thing, because there's so many different things we can do to help ourselves and ground ourselves, but so much of it can be shifted and twisted into disassociating or disconnecting or bypassing in some way. But if we're just always bringing ourselves back to the present moment and allowing ourselves to be uncomfortable there, then like that's where everything is revealed to us. That's where the truth is held.
Yeah, completely. I feel like that's where we find our faith. It's where we find our resilience. It's where we find, confirmation that we're okay, that we're safe, that we're, where we need to be. And that's it. That's everything. I think the present moment is really where we find the medicine we're seeking. And it's important to like go back into the past and retrieve and do soul retrieval and sort of integration work and healing. But the proof that we're safe and the proof that we're okay and the proof that we're capable and resilient and strong and confident is all found in the present. Nothing is guaranteed in the future. And we just, fall into a trap of, I think, really seeking confirmation that we're safe when we do that. And it's never found outside of ourselves. So I love that. I think that's one of the best practices we can, work with individually and collectively, is seeking solace in the present.
Do you have some sort of daily ritual or tools that you lean on to regulate your nervous system and bring yourself back to the present moment?
Yeah, I'm an interesting cat because I'm a Sagittarius moon too. I'm a manifesting generator, as you know. So I love change and I hate it at the same time. So I'm like always challenging myself to change. I'm always challenging myself to like move and groove and sort of travel. And what's more uncomfortable to me typically is just staying in one place for too long. So I have to have rituals and practices that anchor me, because I am I'm also a very light, airy person. I have a lot of air in my chart, mostly air and fire. So there's not a lot that's naturally grounding that I can like resource from. So I've had to learn practices to do that. So I love morning routines and evening routines. And it doesn't matter what it is, but something that really orients you, and says, this is where I am. I'm present. I'm okay. We are in control over how we feel today, like how we move through the day is on our own terms. How we respond to the day, how we respond to the people that we interact with. And what that does is not only helps me orient, but it also helps me prove to my inner parts, because I do a lot of inner child and parts work with people and with myself. It helps me prove to all of my inner parts, my inner children, that I'm present as an adult, as my higher self for them, that I'm in control over the car that I'm driving. I don't need one of them to drive and sort of like wreak havoc in my life. Because children aren't meant to drive, So I love having something that's consistent, and it can change over time, but like for me, and it does for me, it changes often, but like breath work, just like easy breath work in the morning. I like breath of fire oftentimes to kind of just get things moving. I have dipped in and out of Kundalini practices because I really find them powerful, but sometimes they fry me a little bit. So I have to like kind of, honor my capacity and where I'm at with that practice. But and then I just like really, I like to keep it simple. So just having like a morning beverage that's nourishing, nurturing, orienting, taking space. I usually get up before my partner, which I actually love because I have quiet time. And like the last 13 years, it's been with my dog, and we kind of like orient together. And now I'm like having to kind of reinvent that. And so that's an interesting space. But I love starting the morning, waking up early, some sort of movement practice, some sort of breath practice, and some reflection time. And that all can be a 30-minute ritual or even 15 minutes, depending on what time you have. If you have 3 kids, it might be harder to like dedicate a whole hour. For me, I don't. So I'm like really in that space. But and then in the evening, a review practice of some sort, like a winding down. I really like prefer not to watch TV or be on my phone too much, although those are things that I fall in and out of bad habits with. But having a wind down ritual that like indicates to my system that it's time to wind down, that I'm more in my feminine at night. I love to cook, so just having these things that are really anchors throughout my day that orient me to the present moment more, um, journaling is always powerful as well, meditation. So yeah, I kind of switch it up, but I like to have certain anchors that are always there.
Mm, yes, I relate to so much of what you said. And for me, my morning routine is everything because I tend to run anxious. And if I don't have that time in the morning to just ground myself and set my intentions and set my own energy and move slowly, it's really hard for me to find that sense of safety throughout my day. And
Yeah.
I think that's true for so many people. They just don't have that conscious awareness around it. So I'm the biggest advocate for people dedicating even 5 minutes in the morning to just sitting with themselves, journaling, drinking their tea slowly. Like I think it's so important.
Yeah. Anything. Like my mom, I was home over Christmas, and my mom told me that she's been doing the same stretch every morning and it's really helping her back. I'm like, because not only is it helping your back, but it's helping you orient and anchor your day in a way, So whatever it is, it could be like a stretching routine that takes 5 minutes, or it could be the same beverage you make every morning, but being present while you drink it, not like starting up and firing up your computer, but like really getting and being present with what does it feel like to drink that? What does it feel like to go down, like to travel literally down your throat and into your belly? Like, what do you feel like when you drink it? What's coming up while you drink it? Just having like certain things that can sort of signal to your body that it's safe to open and to connect with. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, my favorite thing to tell people to focus on is the feeling, and to ask themselves, how am I feeling? And to ask themselves that every morning and to have that check-in, because having that awareness, I think, can shift our whole lives.
Totally. And we don't do it because we're used to running on survival and sort of just like, you know, it's
Yeah.
like flowing through our day. And we're not taught that in school, to check in. So we have to learn it as adults, and it takes a little bit of time to like rewire that it's okay to do that. And it's okay to take that space.
Yeah, to give ourselves permission to do that. It's hard. I'm curious because I know you have shifted so much in your life as you've gotten older. So I would love to know, what is something that you've felt shame around in the past that you've worked through and learned to love or at least accept about yourself?
Oh my gosh. Well, this one relates to human design.
Mm.
And I just had this conversation with my partner yesterday because he's a generator, but he is so much more filled in. Is that how you say it? Like defined, I guess.
Yeah, centers. Yeah, because you only have two centers defined.
Yeah. And I can be an airhead. Like I've always had so much shame around how sort of like flighty I can be, And I went through periods where I was like, is this ADHD? Like, why do I never complete books? You know what I mean? Like, why do I feel so much of other people's energy? Why do I walk into a room and my mood will immediately shift because of, the mood of the room? And it's taken me a long time to sort of honor that and work with it, because I don't believe that I have to be defined by other people's emotions. I feel like I have a lot of tools now that help me sort of protect my field and process other people's emotions, or not process it, but sort of, you know, allow them to process it on their own. But I move through things very quickly, and I bebop around. I'm like a ping pong ball. So I'm like in this and then I'm in that. And I had a lot of shame around that because there was, so many times within my life where I started something and I was like, God, I hate this now. This is like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. What's wrong with me? And it wasn't until I actually had a reading with Jenna Zoe back in, I think, 2017. And it's funny because human design is one thing where like I'll get a really great reading and then I forget 95% of it. Like it just doesn't retain, but I know I receive what I need to, but it's like an astrology reading is like totally different. I'm like grasping, but human design for me is a little bit more, um, I think I'm meant to just receive it, right? And not to like fully understand it. But she confirmed that, you know, obviously I'm highly sensitive, having all those open centers. I am more of a butterfly, meant to kind of like hop from flower to flower and not to stay in one place. And then it's okay if I change my mind. Like those were all things that I had so much shame around. Because I had friends that were really grounded and they always knew what they wanted and they always just went for what they wanted. They never second guessed themselves. And, it took me a long time, and I'm still learning how to really honor that sacral knowing and to give myself permission to be a being that changes their mind a lot, and if I don't listen to that, I'm doing a disservice to myself and to the collective.
That is honestly the main reason I love human design so much. And astrology plays into this as well. Although I am kind of the opposite. I feel like human design just feels so natural to me. And astrology can sometimes, like, I integrate what I need, but it's not as easy to me. But
Totally.
I love human design so much because it shows us that these parts of ourselves that we felt so much shame around or didn't understand or couldn't accept are key parts of who we are and key parts of our gifts and our what makes us different and unique. And it's actually who we are meant to be. And it helps us learn how to accept it and love it and work with it and integrate it. And it's been so healing for me.
Yeah, it really is. It does give us permission to just be who we are, and to honor that. And I remember when I went into that reading with Jenna, I was like convinced I was a reflector. I was like, I have to be, because I feel like so sensitive and so open and sort of like, I'm even a projector. I was like, I just feel like I'm all the time reflecting other people's energy. And that was true because I was sort of in more of like my Libra codependency, and for other reasons. But she was like, well, the reason you feel that way is because you only have two centers defined. Your root and your head are undefined. And it made a lot of sense to me. It was really confirming for me to hear that and to know that and to start shedding some of the conditioning, the trauma, the shame around the fact that I was that way, and I will say I still struggle with it because we have, I'm sort of wired for a different world. And it's tricky to be in this world, in a relationship, when you're an alien.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason why it's important to really understand your own, I mean, I think your own chart, both human design and astrology, but if not that, at least really understand yourself, because otherwise we can get, like, someone can tell you you're a manifesting generator and give you this list of what a manifesting generator is, and you can still not resonate with that because you're not maybe a typical manifesting generator
Yeah.
in your chart. So really knowing who you are at your core and not comparing it to other people's versions is crucial.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, because I know that there are things about my chart, and I don't know what they are exactly, but like one channel that's defined, that just different things that like make me not like maybe a normal manifesting generator or something, So it is, I think, so important. And I say that with astrology too. I tell people all the time, like, you can be a Virgo and be totally different than other Virgos that you see in the world. You could have a Pisces moon, a Pisces rising. You could have all water in your chart and only your sun in Virgo. And you're not going to experience the world in the same way as someone who would have Virgo with a lot of earth in their chart, So everything's unique, layered, complex, and it's giving us exactly what we need to experience what we're meant to in this life, to grow and evolve in the way we need to. But boxes are boxes, and I think there can be boxes in all different things: astrology, human design, and Pluto and Aquarius will force us to break down those boxes, and to just live in a space of freedom to express our most authentic selves. And that's really, really important to go where we need to go as a collective.
Yeah, I agree, because it can be fun to look at the memes and all the different things on astrology and human design online. Like, those are fun and funny, but what is actually important is embracing who you are and stepping outside of the constraint that those boxes can put on us.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. It's like having fun with it and taking it with a grain of salt, but like really knowing that there are no limits to your experience, and something that defines you or puts you in a box is really just a hindrance.
So I'm curious, what does your connection to your intuition look like? How do you hear it, follow it, strengthen it, and utilize it in your life?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am a sacral person. I think that's what you call it in human design. So I have a very strong sort of initial intuitive hit that I have to follow. And it took me a long time to start doing that. But I know immediately and right away if something's right or not. And my strongest clair is claircognizance. So even when I'm working with people, there's just like my clairvoyance is very strong. So I'm seeing and experiencing things. And that's the case in my own life too. Like I'll be driving and I'll see a scene play out, and then I'll know that that's meant for something. Either it will occur or it's teaching me something or it's integrating something. But my intuition in particular is it's sort of a visceral experience, like there's the just the knowing that just drops in right away. Um, and then I do communicate with source and my guides through my claircognizance. So I'll just like a knowing will just drop in, and I'll just have to. That's one of the trickiest clairs to work with because there's no proof. It's just like,
Mhm.
okay, you better trust it. And that, yeah,
Yeah.
I've had to work over time to really trust my claircognizance because it's not the same as hearing something or seeing something or receiving a sign about something. It's just like this knowing that drops in, and you have to like learn the voice of it, the tone of it, I guess.
That's that's mine as well. So I'm really curious how you have strengthened that trust around it. If it's just about putting it into practice and doing it, or if you have a way that you've really leaned into to trust yourself around that.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly helped when I started my work because I would get messages for people and I would communicate that and then get confirmation. So it was nice to receive that confirmation immediately. That really built my confidence in it. But in my own life, I had to learn kind of the same way, just like leaning into it, honoring it, acting on it. And then that built confidence over time in the like being able to actually trust that, trust that knowing. And also getting clear on like what is knowing and what's fear, like what's your intuition and what's fear.
Yes.
And I have people that ask me that a lot, like, how do you know, how can you sort of decipher between fear and intuition? And fear always has a charge. It has like either anxiety around it, it has like an urgency. It's, yeah, like it has an urgency. I think that's a good way to put it. And your intuition is just grounded, stable. You just know that there's no charge around it. It's sort of just this like this grounded knowing, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I get that question a lot too. And that's how I decipher it as well. The anxiety is more this chaotic energy, and it can also be kind of self-deprecating or built on a lack of self-trust or not enoughness, versus the intuition is this grounded confidence, this just like innate knowing. And it's more of like a compassionate voice.
Totally. Yeah, I think that it's the only way to find that out is to spend time with it, and spend time, have enough spaciousness in your life where you can spend time hearing it. And I think like people always ask me like where to begin. And I'm like, there, create space. You have to have space in your life to hear what it is you need to hear, to see what it is you need to see, to meet the parts of yourself that you need to meet. You have to have space. So like right off the bat, spending time alone, really allowing yourself to get quiet, to enter into those spaces that we're afraid to enter into. And I think that's why we busy ourselves so much and why we dissociate and why we cope is because there's things in there that we fear. And the only way to like really start forming a relationship with your intuition is to create space to do it and to start leaning into some of the fear around it.
Yes. What is something that you wish people talked about more, or that you wish you were able to talk about more openly?
Our feelings, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that, gosh, I think being a Scorpio rising, as you know, having my Pluto in the first house, um, being just such a deep feeling person. I grew up in a really tiny town and not even that it's there. I think it's just in general, like, the way our world has been shaped is to not focus on how we're feeling or to sort of shame how we're feeling or to dissociate from it and to just power through. We live in a quite like a masculine centric world. And that is really suppressed the feminine. And that has led to a lot of suffering. And so, yeah, I just feel like if we were able to honor our emotions and our feelings more and have conversations around them, there would be so much less pain and suffering in the world. And in my own life, of course, like I've gotten better about that, but I did grow up in a household that was more passive, and there were a lot of feelings, but nobody ever like I should say nobody ever talked about them, but it was more just sort of like suppressed, and there was like passive aggressiveness, you know what I mean? And it's taken me a long time to sort of decondition from that, to strip away those tendencies and those patterns, and to lean into the fear of the vulnerability of totally sharing exactly what it is I'm feeling, you know. My current partnership he's really good about that. I mean, it's taken him quite a while too. He's a lot of Capricorn, but like we've gotten to a place where we can really express, you know, and share what it is we're feeling. So
Yeah, this is something I'm so passionate about because I spent a lot of my life up until a few years ago not expressing how I was feeling and not feeling like that was okay and not even knowing how to. And sometimes when I talked, I would start crying. So I just stopped talking about a lot of things. And giving myself permission to start talking about things again and let the emotions come out and let myself be vulnerable and show up imperfectly has been the hardest thing and the most transformative thing for me. I've had to allow myself to do it without knowing how people will receive it and with having to be the person who goes first.
yeah,
Making that shift in the dynamic when other people aren't doing it, which is really scary. But I agree that we need to do it. And if we were able to express our emotions, we would process them quicker and we would be healthier and happier. It comes back to that embodiment and not disassociating and disconnecting, because if we're not allowing ourselves to feel our emotions, they just get stuck in our body.
yeah,
And then it becomes even more harmful, you know?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of the work I do with clients, is identifying where these patterns are held, where these emotional charges are held, and how we can move them through the body. And it's remarkable to see how an interaction at 5 is still manifesting in your life currently. You know, how being embarrassed by a teacher and then not feeling safe to cry about it, or not feeling safe to like emote. I mean, animals go through a traumatic experience and immediately have the nervous system, the physical response to it. They move it through their body, they move that charge. We suppress so much because we have shame around feeling so much, you know, and that, like you said, gets stored, compounded, it turns into habits, it turns into patterns, it turns into um, you know, sort of like emotions that are start to dominate our lives. And I think that if we were able to just express in the moment and share, it repairs attachment trauma, it repairs connective issues, it actually repairs one of our deepest pain points, which is, you know, not feeling seen, loved, connected, you know. So yeah, what we sometimes it's wild being human, because it's like the things we desire most are the things that we sort of like sabotage within our lives, or we push away, you know? So it's wild.
If there was one statement or energetic download that you have around the year 2024, what comes to you when you think about that?
I feel like it's going to feel like the past and the future are colliding, and we're going to get waves of electric quantum leaps, you know, where we're like so expanded, feel so much like what we thought was impossible suddenly becomes possible. You know, we're quantum leaping, we're experiencing frequencies that we've never experienced before. And then we're going to get pulled back into the contraction, you know, get pulled back into the past. We're going to have to retrieve parts of us through that. And that's very normal with thresholds, because we meet a threshold and we immediately have to integrate the fear around crossing it. But we're still a bit in this middle space. I think 2025, 2026 are going to be radically different, because we'll have most of the outer planets in new signs. But excuse me, 2024 is still a little bit of this emerging space, you know? So just give yourself, you know, space to be in that, and to find comfort in the unknown, and to be okay with the fact that we go through contractions and expansions all the time. And it's just a normal way to grow, you know?
Yeah, it's a training for what's to come. And I think it's so common for and definitely speaking for myself, for us to want to enter this new chapter right away and be in this new energy and be moving forward and moving quickly. And we have to be okay with the slowing down and with the integration and with the pause and having all the things be there at the same time.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. That is it. That is everything, really.
Okay, so living intuitively wild means living dedicated to your true, authentic self, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
Honoring our current present experience, trusting our intuition, which in and of itself is wild. It's radical in a world where we're taught not to do that. And staying so connected with that, even when everything around us is proof that we should stay small. I was on a trajectory, in my 20s that is wildly different than what it is now. And I was living a life that was wildly different. And I had to listen to that intuition, that claircognizance, that intuition that kept dropping in and saying, like, this isn't right for you. This isn't right for you. This isn't right for you. And it required me to dissolve almost everything in my life besides, my family and a lot of my beautiful relationships. But it was extremely difficult. It was challenging for my nervous system, but I had to like take that wild leap, to trust it. And I think that in some ways that's my life, is like trusting those pivots, trusting those hits that come in that say, do this. And you're like, what? Why can't I just play small? And I know I'm not allowed to play small in this life. So I don't mean I'm meant to be like a big player, but I'm just meant to challenge my desire for comfort, you know? And so that's what I would say. It's just kind of trusting my intuition, trusting those pivots, even when they seem radical or crazy or silly, and just doing that over and over and over again, staying present with that.
It's the scariest thing and it's the most important thing. Well, thank you so much for being here. It's been such an honor. I'm so grateful to have you on. And please feel free to share the work you're doing, any offerings you have, and where people can connect with you.
Yeah, thank you. It was so lovely being here. Thank you for having me on. So Instagram is a great way to connect with me. I share a lot on there. I do a newsletter, so you can always sign up for my newsletter. My website is just my name, aliofstedal.com. I post and share a lot on Instagram, like my new offerings and things, but I do offer one-on-one sessions. And then I offer a mentorship, which is my favorite work. And I've been doing that for years. And it's a 3-month container that I work with people within, and we really get into your deep core layers and start to help rewire some of these programs that keep us detached from self. There's astrology, inner child work, quantum and intuitive, shamanic healing. There's a lot that goes into that, but that is, I work with people in 3-month containers. So I have space for that will open up in the spring. So I'll be announcing that shortly. And yeah, and then my podcast. That's right. I have a podcast. So my podcast, Soul Archaeology, I started that last August. I had another one with a friend before that, and it is just, I love podcasting. It's so fun. And I do weekly energy updates, kind of dive into different themes that we're navigating, shed light on, the energetic climate, like the weather report, and I also have guests, periodically too. So it's a very fun, yeah, it's a fun experience to podcast. And yeah, those are the main ways to get in touch with me.
Yeah, I love your podcast. I it's one of my favorite astrology podcasts. So
Thank you. That means so much. I appreciate that.
thank you everyone so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.